Hello, everybody, and welcome back to another AI card review. As we're going to jump in with fresh 5 cards, a few less than last time. I think the last episode ended up going a little long. But yeah, before we jump into it, here is past me to explain all about the rating system. If you've seen the previous episode or you just don't really care and you want to get into the action, then use the chapters below to advance to that. And I'll see you there. I'm going to be rating the cards on 3 things. First of all, I'm going to be looking at the design. So the DAI do something cool and creative, something new and exciting. Did it keep the card within the color pie and within the general design principles of Magic? So, if it makes a green creature with flying or a blue creature with reach, that maybe isn't where we want to be. And if it's just copying cards that already exist, that's not very exciting either. So we're going to dock a lot of points there. So that'll be our first score is design. The next score is going to be the balance, which is different from power. Because if a card is way too weak, it'll have a low balance score. If the card is way too strong, it'll have a low balance score. We're looking for something that would be on the range of playable, and my criteria here is some sort of limited environment. So if a card is looking at specific synergies, then I'm going to assume, okay, we're doing that synergy in this limited. So this could be anything from, Bear with Upside to like a pretty powerful rare, but something that wouldn't warp the format entirely around it. And also in this section, I'll be trying to assign a rarity I think the card should be printed at if it were printed. And the final score we'll be giving to the card is the flavor. So does the name and the art and the creature type, do those match up and make sense? Is the flavor text any good? Is the art any good? So this is a pretty subjective one, but I think it'll be fun. Since the Urza's AI does include art and flavor text, it'll be fun to try and rate those. So that's the scoring system. Let's get into it. All right, and here's our first card, Explosive Algae. I like it. 4 and a blue for a 3/3 creature fish. Excuse me. 2 and a blue, sacrifice Explosive Algae. Explosive Algae deals 3 damage to target creature. Okay, an actual, like, fully functional card here. I don't hate it. So let's look at the design of this thing. All right, so we got a blue fish. That's okay, though. Is it a fish or is it an algae? Slightly confusing there, but okay, not too bad. For a blue 3/3, sacrifice it. Explosive Algae deals 3 damage to target creature. A little bit of a red ability there. Typically blue wouldn't sacrifice their creatures to deal damage to other creatures. There is the specific card I'm thinking of. As usual, I'm going to be blanking on the names. I'll have to, my future self will have to edit them in. But yeah, usually this ability is like blue plus red. So I'm going to have to dock a little bit of design for going off color pie, but I like the idea. You have this algae that is a creature, but then you can pay some mana, sacrifice it, and boom, it explodes, dealing some damage. That's not too bad. It would maybe be even more flavorful if it hit the entire board rather than a single creature, but that might be a little bit too powerful. There might be balance issues there. So overall, it's not the most creative thing. We've seen this type of effect before, and it goes a little bit out of color pie, but I like the sort of flavor plus design interaction of like, oh, it's an explosive algae, so you can sacrifice and explode it, and then does something. That's pretty cool. So not a bad effort. I'm gonna give this a 3 out of 5 on design. Again, for docking a point for the color pie issues um, and I guess a point for the creature type not matching up, and just the sort of lack of creativity. Nothing too special, but not bad, not bad. You could actually print this card with maybe just a few tweaks. And I guess we can get into the balance section with that because this card is a little weak at the moment. So definitely be a common. There's nothing crazy going on here. I'm gonna double check it. Double check the text. Sacrifice this. Explosive algae deals 3. Okay. Some of these have like really sneaky little bits of text that I missed in my last video. I just want to make sure I'm not missing anything crucial here. So yeah, in terms of balance, 5 mana for a 3/3 is quite expensive. If you're paying 5 mana for a 3/3, you'd like it to have a pretty good ability, and this ability is not that good. especially since there's another expensive cost on top of that. So if you want to use this to remove a 3/3, you're paying 8 mana over 2 installments. That's not great. Um, so yeah, it's not great balance wise. Probably also put it at a 3 just because again, it's fairly fixable. All you need to do is adjust these mana costs. If you make it 4 to play and like 1 to sacrifice, it's a perfectly reasonable common to see in a set. You could have some synergies with it, but you don't necessarily need them. It's just like, hey, here's a hill giant, and sometimes I can use it to do something cool. Seems okay. All right, let's look at the flavor. I already said I like the name Explosive Algae with an ability that makes the creature explode. That's pretty cool. Blue makes sense for an algae, though. Again, I would like to see some red mixed in there for the direct damage. And the flavor text. What we would do if it weren't for the fishing hook, all one word, and the line are all that we need to break through the skin of the reefs. Okay, I'm having trouble processing this statement immediately, which is not a good sign. What would we do, okay, if it weren't for the fishing hook and line are all that we need to break through the skin of the reef? Do reefs have skin? I don't think reefs have skin. Okay, so the flavor text is quite confusing. It has some vague mentions of a reef, which kind of makes sense with algae, and something to do with fishing, which has to do with the fish. So it's not a complete loss, but it's pretty bad because it's so hard to even parse what's going on with this flavor text. So definitely back to drawing board on that, but I like the name with the abilities. The art's not bad, actually. We have a little water scene, and then something's exploding out of it, right? This could very easily be the explosive algae right here, so... I like that. It's just the flavor text is quite bad, and then this creature type could maybe use fixing. I don't know if algae's a creature type, so maybe fish is the closest we can get. I'm not really sure. But I'm gonna also give this a 3 on that. There's the camera. There's the camera. 3. It's 3s across the board. Not a terrible effort. I could see this card existing, though I would probably have red in it somewhere. All right, well, on to the next one. All right, here's our next card. We have a green one this time. Looks like 3 and a green for a 3/3. Verdelen's Archdruid, creature spider. Okay. Has reach. This creature can block creatures with flying. Okay. I think that's the reminder text for reach. I don't know if it's worded exactly in this way, but it at least gets the essence across. That's good. And that's it. And not a lot happening there. So it's a 4 mana 3/3 spider with reach. And its name is a Verdelen's Archdruid. Well, once again, this is not a particularly inspiring design. It is perfectly in color pie, right? The green creature with reach, awesome. Spider has reach, that's good. The name could use a little work. If it's going to be an archer, it could even be a spider druid. That could be interesting. We could have a set centered around some sort of druidic spiders. That could be sweet, but so I'd like to see that sort of connect up a little bit better. Otherwise, you know, it's boring. It's definitely boring, and spiders usually have more toughness than power. So I would like to see, and 2/4, like a 2/4 reach, right? That card exists already. It's Giant Spider. But if you look at most spiders through Magic's history, they all have less power than toughness. So this thing being a 3/3 is a little bit awkward. So, I'm like between a 3 and a 4 on this because so there's some minor points off for the name and the creature type, like not quite working, and then the power and toughness thing, and then just the fact that it's boring, right? It's a spider with reach. I'm not excited about this card, but you know, it could be a card that needs to exist in the set, and that's fine. So I'm gonna give this a begrudging 4. It's just not interesting, but there's nothing ultimately that wrong with it. So, begrudging 4. Begrudging 4. I'm going to stick with it. I'm not sure if that's right. Balance-wise, again, this would definitely be a common 4 mana 3/3 reach. Not much to say there. I guess it's a 5. Like we've seen 4-mana 2/4s with reach, and they usually play pretty well in a limited set. It's not your bomb, right? It's not a card you first pick, or probably even pick in the first pack of the half the pack if you're drafting, but it's certainly a card that'll end up in your deck a lot of the time. So yeah, no real complaints. 5 out of 5 on balance. Let's look at the flavor. So again, I already mentioned the creature type, creature name situation. The art looks a little bit spidery. There's a lot of limbs flying about, so I could see that working. Let's read the flavor text. Life's here. I see a spider here. We may as well dance. That's by Jula, human. Last words. Ooh, last words. Interesting, interesting. I'm actually kind of into this flavor text. We got this very carefree human. Look, we're here, we're alive, there's a spider, let's dance, and the spider kills them, I guess. Pretty dark, but I kind of like it. It's evocative, even if it's a little bit weird. So I actually approve of this. I approve of this flavor text. I approve of the art. Oddly, I think the only thing that this needs, and this is more of a design issue than a flavor issue, is it really should be a spider druid, and this card would kind of pop off here, because it looks like something with a lot of legs, but there's also that druidic sort of situation with all this like green mana happening. I actually think it's a slam dunk flavor wise. I like the flavor text; it's cool. I like the art. And I think as long as it was a druid and its creature type, that would work. So I'm going to give this a 5 out of 5 flavor. High scoring card, even though it's a little bit boring. Let's move on to the next one. All right, and here's our next card. We have Tribal Tempest. Ooh, Tribal Tempest. Okay. 2 and a red, instant tribal. Okay, like it so far. When you cast this spell, creatures you control get +1/+0. Okay. Little bit weird. Also, I think I might be wrong about this. I might have to check on Gather. I think tribal spells usually have a creature type associated with them. Am I right on that? I'm gonna give that a quick check here.
A few moments later.
Okay, so after a quick look at Gather, yes, tribal instances and sorceries and other spells would have a creature type with them, so that's a little bit weird. It's also templated incorrectly. It should say tribal instant dash whatever the type is. So okay, small templating issue, not a huge deal. And then okay, let's get into the real weirdness of the card, which is the fact that the spell itself doesn't have any effect, but rather it has a cast trigger. So it's almost like an Eldrazi, right? Like if you have a Kozilek or a Numbercool or whatever, they say when you cast them, this thing happens. So it's like that. And when you cast a spell, boom, that's a trigger. Your creatures you control get some so. But the card itself does nothing. That's weird. I don't like it. So not the greatest design, because ultimately at the end of the day, if you strip away all of the weirdness of it, it's just a mass pump that's a little bit weak. We can talk about that in the balance portion, but it's a mass pump for your team. But there's just all kinds of weird stuff happening here with, okay, why is it tribal with no creature type? What are we trying to do there? Why is it tribal at all? Why does it, instead of having an effect, have a trigger that happens when you have the effect? That's just going to confuse people for no reason. I don't like it. I think this is a confusing and weird design that ultimately accomplishes not a whole lot. So I'm going to give it a 1. Am I going to be that harsh? I'll bump it up to 2 just because it is on Color Pie. A team, especially a power only team pup in red, makes a lot of sense for an instant. So it fits on that front at least. But the card's doing a lot of weird things for no reason that don't necessarily make sense. So I can't go any higher than 2. But it's not so bad that you couldn't, this is just like Trumpet Blast, right? But way dumber. So I'll call it 2 on design. Pretty bad. All right, let's look at the balance, which is also quite bad. We don't have to deal with the fact that it's a tribal doesn't really affect the balance too much, especially since it has no creature type. So it's not like you can go get this with your Goblin Matron or something. And it's a 3-mana spell that pumps your team by 1 power. That's really bad. Even if you have a bunch of tokens on the board or something, this is just not enough. So, I think also a 2 on the balance. It's really far off the mark, but we have plenty of examples of cards like this in the past, so it's easy enough to fix by just adjusting the power that it grants or the mana cost or something. We can make it work. All right, and lastly, let's look at the flavor. So Tribal Tempest. It's a tribal instant. I don't know what's going on with the name or the art. Let's see if the flavor text can save it. Some lay frozen until end of turn. Oh no. I thought it might say until the end of time, which would still not make any sense with the card, but at least it's kind of cool. This is just, oh, it's bad. Flavor text, boo, get out. Art, what's even happening? It's just a bunch of lines with a zebra leg sticking out? I don't get it. There might be something written up here as well. I don't quite know. Trumpet? Tribal? Who knows? Tribal Tempest. The tribal part doesn't make any sense. The Tempest I can almost see for like, oh, it's buffing your creatures or whatever, but it's not enough to salvage this. This is a 0 in flavor. It's bad. I don't like it. This card sucks on every axis. Let us move on to hopefully something cooler. Okay, and here's our next card. It's a blue one this time. We got Kanzashino. Blind Eel. 1 in a blue. 1/1 eel. Whenever you cast a spell, draw a card. Oh boy. Oh boy, that's that is a powerful effect. That's a powerful effect. Okay, let's look at the design of this thing. So first of all, it's got a cool title, Kanzashino Blind Eel. It should probably be legendary. This should be a legendary eel, I imagine. But a creature type and name match up. That's sweet. It's a blue eel, 1/1. Okay, that's all reasonable. Whenever you cast a spell, draw a card is a heck of a line of text. It's oof. Is this even printable at any mana cost? I actually don't know if this is ever printable. In limited, it's okay. Like in limited, you could actually make this card function at the appropriate stats and mana cost. It would be fine. But if you think about something like vintage, oh goodness, you get this guy into play, you're just going. Nobody's stopping you. Oof. So there may be considerations to where I don't know if this line of text can ever be reprinted on a card. That said, I mean, it's cool. It's, it's simultaneously very simple, but very much gets a player's brain churning like, oh, what can I do with this? This is sweet. I want to get my value. Obviously, we'll talk in the balance section about how ridiculously overpowered this is, but design-wise, excuse me, it's such a dangerous effect. I'm not an expert on all the constructed formats, and I would have to, you'd have to really dig in and see, is this gonna break formats? Even if you make it really, like, because you could make this, I don't know, 6 mana 1/1 or something, but there's probably still ways to cheat it into play and then do really disgusting things. So, based on that, I'm gonna give this a 4 on design because it's cool. It's a blue creature that draws you cards. That's all on color pie on flavor. It's a sweet legendary. I'm docking a little bit of points for the fact that it's not legendary and it clearly should be, and a little bit of points just because you'd have to really theory craft and test this sort of effect. I'm trying to think. Is there a card in Magic that does this already? There can't be, right? This is too busted. Let's check.
A few moments later.
All right, so quick journey through Gatherer. I'm not seeing anything that just does this. Usually they have restrictions, and maybe that's even better for design, Just whenever you cast a spell, draw a card is maybe a little too easy, and so you'd want to limit it to... And there's examples, there's like, oh, when you cast a spell not on your turn, when you cast an enchantment spell, when you cast a creature spell, and that's kind of interesting, maybe more so than when you cast a spell, draw a card. Either way, I'm going to stick to 4 out of 5. I think it's a reasonable design, even if extremely dangerous, but that's not something for design to necessarily worry about. All right, balance-wise, this thing is absurdly broken. I mean, 1, 0? Is this a 0 out of 5 on balance? That busted? It's maybe a 1 just because your opponent can kill this, right? And then you stop getting your value. Especially if that instant speed kill. When you play this, you play another card, and then kill it, you only got like 1 card worth of value. But for a 2-mana card, this does way too much. Oh boy. So this is a 1 unbalance, and it would be a mythic, because boy, you don't want to see this card floating around. All right, flavor. Kanzashino Blind Eel. Okay, 1/1 eel, sure. What's the flavor text? When you cast a teleportation spell, Kanzash, not his name, one of your wills is freed. Curious flavor text. Is Kanzash a shortening? Like, is this someone who knows this blind eel very well? And they're like, ah, my buddy Kanzash. Did you know that when you cast a teleportation spell, one of your wills is freed? That's cool. Maybe it needs an attribution? Is that what's missing in this flavor text? Possible. Huh. Okay, it's intriguing. It's not a total loss. I kind of like the name. I'm not entirely sure what the blind deal has to do with card draw and spell casting, but okay. And then, I mean, the art looks enough like an eel and it seems to be underwater. I could maybe use a little bit more like something to do with the casting of spells or something. Maybe something to indicate this eel's blind. But okay. I think it's pretty good, honestly. 4 out of 5 flavor. The flavor text needs a little bit of workshopping. Maybe we can spruce up the art just a bit, but honestly, not a bad effort. Not a bad effort on the flavor. All right, that's Kanzashino, Blind Eel. On to the next card. All right, our next card is here, and we got Ondu, Old Man's Knoll. Knoll? How do you say this word?
Knoll. Knoll.
Knoll. All right. It's an instant with landfall. Fascinating. Instant landfall. Each opponent gains control of target creature if able. Landfall deals when... Oh no. Oh no. It started off intriguing. An instant with landfall. I don't know how you would make that work because you can't really play lands while this is on the stack. You could, I guess, play this and then crack a fetch, and then would that work? Would land... Okay, all right. If there's any judges watching this right now, could landfall on an instant work in some fashion or not? Let me know in the comments. I'm curious. I'm going to assume yes if it's on the stack. That's my assumption for now. All right. So Ondu, Old Man's Knoll. When I read instant, each opponent gains control of target creature if able. Okay. Not totally sure how this would work in multiplayer. If each opponent gains control of the same creature. That's weird. Landfall deals 1 damage to each creature. Well, Landfall is an ability. It's not the name of this card. I guess we'll assume it also deals 1 damage to each creature when you landfall. Okay, so design. Let's try to break this down. Ondu Old Man's Knoll instant. Not understanding that very much. It sounds like a location of some sort. Why is it an instant? Maybe it could be a creature, but definitely not an instant. Landfall on instant is, again, absolutely fascinating, but unless A, it works the way I think it works, which I'm not even sure it does, and then we assume this is some kind of set that's just like absolutely chock full of fetch lands, which I'm pretty sure Wizards regrets and were a mistake. But okay, let's assume both those things are true. Then you have this card that you can play, then crack some fetches in response, or not in response, but as it's on the stack. And then you can make your opponent gain control of creatures and also deal 1 damage to each creature. So it's a really, really complicated way to get a Pyroclasm while also gifting your opponent creatures, though you can target their own creatures so that the first part doesn't have to do anything. Unless they have no board, but then why would you play this? That said, this is pretty bad design. It requires some really obscure rules to work. Like, I'm a reasonably experienced player, and I have no idea how this would work. Put this in front of a new player, and they'd be lost, right? So that's bad. It's very obscure rules interactions. Unclear exactly what it even does, and even if everything works the way you think it works, at the end of the day, you're just making a really complicated Pyroclasm or gifting your opponent creatures, which has been done in the past. There are cards in Magic that let you give your permanents to your opponent, and there's some applications, mostly in like fun little commander decks and stuff, to do something with that. It's not, I don't think there's ever been a serious deck that cared about that. Maybe there has. Maybe like way back in the day with oh, there's like a really old card in enchantment that like you gain a bunch of life and you lose a bunch of life. I'll have to look it up, but so maybe this was a competitive thing way back in the day. I'm not sure. Point is, this is way too convoluted for the effect, and like it's a convoluted rules thing on top of a convoluted effect. It doesn't really make a lot of sense. I don't know why this is. I mean, it's kind of a red effect sometimes, so I guess that part at least. But I'm still giving this a 0 on design. There's just way too much going on that doesn't make a whole lot of sense. Okay, balance-wise, I think it's also fairly easy 0. Unless you have specifically fetch lands, and again, this is all based on the fact that rules work the way I think they work, and they might not. Unless you have fetch lands, it does nothing. If you do have fetch lands, it's a small damage to each creature thing, and then you can gift your opponent creatures. That seems really, really bad. I don't know why you would ever put this in your deck. So this is 0 on balance as well. Ooh, not doing well so far. Let's look at the flavor. Ondu Old Man's Knoll Instant. I hope this is the best flavor text in all of history, because if it's not, it's going to be a triple zeros card, I think. When the cities of the hallowed Falconwrath fall, its bones and flesh would be placed into a pile and buried in a heap. Okay. It's flavor text that at least grammatically makes sense, and like it's sort of evocative to not of anything that has to do with this card. So, okay. I do like that the art seems to be a knoll. I think. Is that what a knoll is? Like a hill? I think that's right. Maybe that's not right. I'm going to assume that's right. So the art, I guess, sort of matches the name. Maybe this here is Ondu, the old man, and this is his knoll. Not a fan of the flavor text, but at least it makes sense grammatically. I guess I'll give this a 2 because I kind of like the art and the name sort of working together. So we'll call it a 2 on flavor. All right, Ondu, sorry, not a great showing. Let's hope our final card is sweet. All right, and our final card for the day is a blue one. We got the Slackyard Sovereign. Oh, this art's crazy. What is happening? Slackyard Sovereign, 4 and a blue. 3/2 bird. Okay, so far so good. Flying, I like that. At the beginning of your upkeep, sacrifice Slack. Wait, that's a different name. Slackyard Sally Bear Wizard creature. Unless you discard a card. Oh no. Oh no, it was going so well, and then it just all fell apart. At the beginning of your upkeep, sacrifice Slackyard Sally Bear Wizard creature. So that would indicate that whole thing is a creature type. So, ooh, actually, it's a rules thing I might have to check out here, because presumably you won't have very many Slackyard Sally Bear Wizard creatures. So are you allowed to choose to sacrifice the creature even though you don't have it because it's in less clause, or would you be forced to discard a card each turn? Okay, well, either way, It's a little bit odd. Slackyard Sovereign. Okay, let's try to break this down. So 3/2 flying bird for 5. That part, that makes sense. Blue flying creature bird, all good. Slackyard Sovereign is a little bit of a weird name, but maybe it's some sort of like, I would expect this to be like a bird lord or something, which is not, but okay. And then it has the drawback of each upkeep you have to sacrifice this very specific thing or discard a card. So okay. That's more of like let me collect my thoughts here. We've seen that effect on like older demons, right? But way back in the early days of Magic, there were all sorts of like big black demons that would say, "Hey, it's really big and undercosted, at least for the time." These days, they're kind of laughable, but um, huge demon, and then okay, but on your upkeep, you have to do something awful to keep it around. Cool. So that's a very black ability. And even some modern cards have some similar things like that. So there's definitely precedent for that in black. I don't think it's a very blue ability. Obviously, there's a balance issue with this thing being already pretty weak for its cost, and then it has this drawback, so you don't like that. But okay, fine. So yeah, I don't completely hate it. It kind of depends on how this thing works. My understanding is because it says unless rather than or, you can always choose to sacrifice a Slackyard Sally Bear Wizard, which you presumably won't have, which means there's actually no downside. But that's also kind of bad for the design because that means there's this whole line of text that does nothing unless you want to discard cards. I guess this could be like your discard outlet for a reanimator deck or something. Then it's 5 mana. That's not very good. So I do like that it's a flying bird in blue. That part's good. The ability doesn't work that well. It's not a very blue ability. Otherwise, none of it's too interesting. I think I'm going to give this like a 2 on design. It's creeping up on a 3, but I don't think it's quite there. All right, let's look at the balance. So yeah, 5 mana, 3/2 flyer, and depending on how generously you interpret this effect, it either has no downside or it makes you discard a card each turn. Either way, that's not good enough for a 5 mana 3/2. You want, again, if I was paying 5 mana for a 3/2 flyer, I want a good upside on it, not a downside or nothing. So, yeah, I'd expect this to be like, if it's an actual downside, this needs to be like 2 mana, maybe even 1 mana. If it's just nothing, then like 4 would be fine. I guess I'd make this rare because who the hell knows what this thing even does. It takes some mental processing. It's not a very simple card. But at the end of the day, it's not very powerful. Yeah, I guess I call this a 1 on balance because it's just way too weak right now, regardless if I interpret the ability. And if the set that this was printed included lots of Slackyard Sally Bear Wizards, unless they all have really good death triggers or something, I don't know why you'd ever want this thing. So, calling this a 1. All right, let's look at the flavor. Slackyard Sovereign Bird. Okay, I'm not sure what's going on with this art. It looks like maybe a forest, and like I could be convinced this blob here is a bird, but it's not a very good bird, is it? Flavor text. Sometimes it isn't enough to be the center of a swarm, but a shroud is still an empty hand. Is it? Is a shroud an empty hand? I'm pretty sure a shroud is like a piece of cloth. Sometimes it isn't enough to be the center of a swarm. I like that part of flavor text, but then after the but is where it starts to unravel a bit. But a shroud is then, yeah, it needs some work. Needs some work. I like this idea of like a swarm. And again, if the Slackyard Sovereign was some kind of bird lord, then that could work. Maybe he's at the center of your swarm of birds. That's pretty cool. So there's something to be said for the flavor text having a start to something. But the art's a little bit weak. Name's okay. I don't know what the Slackyard is. Is this a famous location from our new set? Maybe. So, It's a lot of it didn't quite get there, so I think it gets a 2 on the flavor. We'll call that a day for Slackyard Sovereign. All right, well, that'll do it for this iteration of reviewing AI generated magic. I need a better title. That's a long title. Anyway, thanks for watching. Hope you enjoyed. I certainly had fun. I'm gonna keep these coming, and I'll see you in the next one. Thanks for watching.